Welcome to the Pre to Post Transplant Podcast, a podcast that brings personal stories from transplant survivors, their families, friends, and loved ones. This is where you will hear challenges and triumphs of everyone involved in this journey. Our guests will offer wisdom, advice, and inspiration on everything you want to know about transplant. My name is Jenny McFarland. I am a transplant survivor, and this is a podcast I wish I had before and immediately following my transplant. Thank you for listening. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Jenny McFarland, your host, and I am so excited about today's episode. I know I say that every time. I truly am excited every time, but today's episode is so cute and I can't wait to share it with you. But first, I want to tell you the Pre to Post Transplant Foundation has finally opened up the cleaning program. So we are able to help transplant recipients return home from getting their transplant to a bacteria-free environment. And we're working with some cleaning companies to provide this service to them. And it just makes me so happy that we're finally able to really start helping people and get this program up and running. Of course, we still have our buddy program. So if you are in the organ donation transplant community, sign up for our buddy program, be matched with somebody who has been through what you're going through, and sign up to be somebody's buddy so that you can mentor them and provide them with support. We all know going through this process, we need people, we need support, and this buddy program is a great way to give it to them. The buddy program is for pre and post-transplant caregivers, living donors, donor family members, newly transplanted recipients. So log on to the website at www.pretopost.org and sign up to be a buddy. One other thing I want to talk to you about is in a couple of weeks, well, if you're listening to this real time, in a couple of weeks, the Transplant Games of America is coming to San Diego, and the Pre to Post Transplant Foundation is going to have a booth in the exhibitor hall at the Transplant Games. So I am so excited to have the foundation there representing, and also, of course, the podcast is going to be right there with them. So come on by the booth if you're there. Say, hey, I listened to your podcast, and introduce yourself, and, let's meet. I want to meet you. And also, I am so excited. I am going to participate in the Transplant Games. I have my friend Haley, who is a, pardon my language, badass cornhole player. And she has talked me into partnering with her. So before this, I'd never played cornhole a day in my life. And now, I've been playing every day, trying to practice. And I'm still not, that great, but Haley is. So we are going to go there and hopefully win the gold medal. And Haley is a good friend of mine, and she's been on the podcast before. If you have been listening this whole time, if you remember way back in, I think it was 2019, Haley was on the podcast. She was the lung transplant recipient who got her transplant on Christmas Day. So if you scroll on back to December of 2019, you can hear her journey and listen to her episode. It's a great episode, one of my favorites. So I want to talk about my guests today. I have two guests, Bobby Chanel and Faith Crouch, and they are coming on to tell us about their story. Now, I must warn you that this is the cutest love story ever. If you like love stories, you're going to love this story. Bobby and Faith come on and talk about how they met and how it's related to transplant. And, of course, they're going to tell us about their transplant journeys as well. I do want to mention that a few times we do talk about some people in Nora's Home. And I beeped out their names just because I don't know if those people are going to feel comfortable having their name in the podcast. So you will hear a few beeps whenever we're talking about specific people at Nora's Home, but it's not too bad. And I think that you won't even notice. So Bobby and Faith also previously were on the news talking about their story. And so I have included that link in my show notes if you want to watch the story. It's a cute story. And I just, this is like a lighthearted, fun thing for the podcast, which I love. And I love different topics and I love love stories. So you guys are going to love this story too. So I'm going to stop rambling on about how much I love it and just get right into it. So I hope you really enjoy, as much as I did, the story of Bobby and Faith. Hi, Bobby. Hi, Faith. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
So I am so excited that you guys are on the podcast today because we are going to be talking about something special and completely different for the podcast. And we're going to get to talking about that. But first, I want to talk to you guys both about your transplants. So I'm going to start with Bobby. And Bobby, I want you to tell me when you had your transplant, where you had your transplant, and why you needed one.
Okay. I got my transplant January the 13th, this year, 2022. And
Okay.
it's at Memorial Hermann Hospital. The reason I got it is because I've been having heart problems since 2003, and I had congestive heart failure. I had an LVAD for 6 years, and then I had to have the heart transplant because my heart was completely give out.
Yeah, he couldn't leave the hospital.
Yeah. So you were on the transplant list for a really long time.
I was on the transplant list for about 6 years.
That's crazy. So Faith, okay. So Faith, tell me about yours. Like when, where, and why.
Okay, so I have cystic fibrosis, so everybody's probably pretty familiar with that by now.
Yep.
I was at my end stages. I was listed in 3 different transplant centers. I was listed at the University of Washington in Seattle. I was listed at the University Hospital in San Antonio. And then I finally, where I received my transplant was at Houston Methodist. And so I got mine, when was mine? September 13th, 2020. So I'm coming up on my 2-year here pretty soon.
So, the funny thing is when I first met you, I didn't realize that you had like just had your transplant. When I first met you, I thought you were already like good 3, 4, 5 years out. So you had
Really?
your transplant like 2 years after me. So that's insane.
Yeah. And which is really amazing because my transplant afterwards there was a lot of drama. There was a lot of hiccups and a lot of problems in the first 6 months. And so
Wow.
for that first 6 months to be discounted, that's, I've done really well with the time that I've had.
So you had a lot of like, when you say you had a lot of drama, you mean like with like the hospitals and stuff, or with your family, or?
Both.
Oh.
So my ex-husband is in the Army. And so I got listed in Washington because that's where we were stationed, was at JBLM. And I had just had my daughter. And then we got stationed in San Antonio because he's from Texas. And so he wanted to be back in Texas. And so I worked very hard to get relisted in San Antonio. Their process is a little chaotic. And so it took me a long time to be reevaluated and, relisted. And so I was listed there for about 6 or 7 months. And then I ended up getting kicked off the list there due to, some misunderstandings and hard feelings and stuff like that. And then I got listed here and was listed here for a year and 10 days.
So you were on the list for a year and 10 days. Wow.
I was on the list for 3 years on and off. That's because crazy. I was listed at 3 different transplant centers. So
yeah.
And
so I always wonder, and this might be a good question for Bobby. And so there are people who are listed on the transplant list for years and years. And so how do you manage your health from, because obviously when you get on the list, you're ready for a transplant. So how do you manage to last, 3 years for Faith or 6 years for Bobby? Like whenever I got on the list, it's because my health was going down fast and it took me 5 days. But I can't, like,
It
I'm
took
just
you
curious.
5 days?
I was on the list for 5 days. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And it's funny because I didn't even think that was going to happen that fast. Like I was out running around and
They tell us CF patients, at least to my knowledge, that usually we wait a while because we're really small, generally speaking. And, I had a rare blood type and was really, really small. So,
well, I'm definitely not small. I'm average height and my blood type's, normal
yeah.
or
Yeah.
not rare.
When I
And
first
so
met you, I thought there was no way that you could have cystic fibrosis because you're so tall compared to me.
I know. I'm like, I always said, I'm so big and people wouldn't understand. I'm like, you don't understand. Like all these people with CF are little and tiny, and I'm like normal. I'm like huge compared to these other little people. So,
Yeah.
but I was lucky. I didn't have a lot of the nutrition issues that a lot of CF people do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I,
Well, and I
I
think
lucked out.
for maintaining your health, and even with, I think I'll let Bobby talk about his, but with us, it's, cystic fibrosis trajectory is very slow until it's not. And then it's a
Right.
cliffhanger. And
Right.
we all get listed right at that cliffhanger pretty much. And so we are holding on as tight as we can. And I was in the hospital a lot. I was on a BiPAP. I was on a BiPAP like 16, 20 hours a day sometimes,
Wow.
and so we, rely continuously on machines at that point, and I know Bobby definitely did for a long time.
Yeah, Bobby, your turn.
Well, when I got the LVAD, that was 2015. I was really bad when I got that, and I really didn't think I was going to make it. And then when I got the LVAD, they gave me the extended life to make it to where I'm at. But during that time, it was really tough. It's tough being away from home and, your family and your friends. But, here at Nora's Home, it's, like we say, it is home away from home, and it's been my home for 6 years. And, I'm so blessed to have it. I think that's the only way I have made it, and my family,
Yeah.
them being for me too.
How long were you in the hospital? Like once you went in the hospital to stay in the hospital before you got your transplant?
Before I got my transplant, I was in there for about 3 months, altogether 4 months before I got out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it wasn't, there wasn't nothing about it that, good. I just seemed to go just downhill since when I first went in. My defibrillator kept hitting me, and they finally eventually had to turn it off on me and just keep the crash cart in there with me until I finally got my heart anyways.
Yeah. Wow. So they had to keep the crash cart in your room.
Yeah.
How'd that feel? Like, were you like freaked out about that? Like, that would freak me out. I would think that I would worry.
It did at first, but after they finally turned my defibrillator off, it made it not quite so strenuous because I was always worried about it hitting me. And I got to where, I couldn't move, or they'd have to hit me with the crash cart.
Yeah. Eesh. Wow.
Yeah, I remember the first time I walked into your hospital room and saw the crash cart, like, as you told me, but I remember seeing it, and it was like a rock in your gut. Like it just kind of made you just kind of sink down,
Right.
Yeah.
So, before I jump ahead to what we're supposed to be talking about here, tell me about, well, first of all, both of you tell me how you're doing now. So you both had your transplants. How is your health now?
After I got my transplant, I could tell, every month I feel leaps and bounds better. I just, at first, it was really tough. I had a lot of pain and in my chest, and I've been having some. My body's wanting to reject or the wires in me. It's wanting to reject them. So my chest is hurting quite a bit from that, but it's getting better and better.
Is that a normal thing?
It's not a normal thing.
It's not abnormal either. It's a more normal response for your body, really.
Yeah, trying to get rid of it, but they said in another 6 months they'll probably go in and try to take the wires out, so it'll quit. Maybe that'll fix me.
Yeah.
But I'm doing great right now. Live. I couldn't be more happy.
Yeah. Well, you look good. You look great.
Yeah, he looks way better than when he came out. It was quite shocking to see him, especially for everybody here because they hadn't seen him in 4 months.
Yeah.
He was a little crazy looking.
So what about you, Faith? How are you doing since your transplant?
I'm doing wonderful. There's always hiccups. There's always seems like for the first little while, there's always something to fix, after transplant. There's always something to do. There's, and I'm at the very end of that. So I have to have another couple surgeries and I'm good to go. I'm good. Like I'm done. I did have, because of my CF, I had more kidney problems and stuff like that in the beginning and still kind of a problem, but I'm doing wonderful. I don't have to sleep all day. I don't have to, take rests a lot. And it's just, I can raise my daughter now. So it's wonderful. It's great.
Yeah. So, and how old is your daughter?
She is 6. She will very happily tell you that she is older now and she is 6.
Yes. Older and wiser for sure.
That's right. She knows everything now.
So like kind of off topic. I've always wanted to talk to somebody who's had CF and had a baby before transplant. And I was just wondering if having her, so I always wanted to have a baby and I always talk to my doctor and like, do you think I could have a baby? And they're like, yeah, you're fine having a baby. The only problem is when you have a baby, they kind of wear you out, you get real tired. So do you think that having your daughter maybe contributed to your health declining a little bit?
Yes. Unfortunately, I would say that she expedited the process, or being not her, and really not her, but being a mother, it's not, not pregnancy that kills you, it's motherhood.
Right.
Because it just, for every mother, it draws every single piece of energy you have in the beginning. And you feel like, I remember feeling that I just didn't have anything left in me to be able to do treatments. And I would fall asleep during treatments and I would hold her so she'd fall asleep while I was doing treatments. And but we consulted a transplant doc actually before we got pregnant, and the transplant doc in Arizona told my ex-husband and I that if we wanted to have babies, if I was still good, but if we wanted to do it, we do it now, because he estimated at the rate that I was going, I'd need a transplant in 3 years, and he was spot on. He was literally within the month spot on. But yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. It was.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So let's talk a little bit about Nora's Home. So you are both staying at Nora's Home, and I've mentioned Nora's Home quite a bit actually on my podcast. So hopefully people know what I'm talking about. But if they don't, Nora's Home is a place in Houston that transplant recipients can stay pre or post transplant, and it's a wonderful place. I work there, and I get to meet a lot of great people, which is where I met the two of you. So first, tell me about how you got to Nora's Home. So we know that Bobby's been there a little bit longer than Faith, but Faith, tell me about your experience with Nora's Home.
Yeah. So Nora's Home was suggested to me by my social worker at Houston Methodist. And it was because we were driving from San Antonio, like pre-transplant, to Houston, and we needed a place to stay. And they recommended Nora's Home. And so I have Nora's Home in back before transplant while I was kind of getting evaluated and waiting and doing all my clinics and stuff. And then so after my transplant, it was in the middle of COVID, and they weren't accepting anybody like that hadn't been transplanted, right? And I ended up staying with my ex-husband's family for the first 6 months of my transplant. But while I was staying with them, I got COVID. And so I couldn't come to Nora's Home until I was cleared of COVID. And actually, the week that I was cleared, I moved into Nora's at, I think it was at the end of March, beginning of April, I think, 2021. And now this place I feel like this is where my soul lives now. This place nurtures my soul. It saved my life. I was having a really hard time when I moved into Nora's Home, and the wonderful people here and just the atmosphere that they provide and like nurture here really helped kind of soothe the pain that I was in when I got here.
Yeah. I see that. It doesn't for me too. And I just worked there.
Right.
So what about you, Bobby? Like, how did you get involved with Nora's Home?
It was my social worker and my coordinator. They both told me about it. We were here at Nora's, and then I went and got evaluated. And I've been here ever since. It was the people here, they're just so wonderful. They treat you like family. They are my family. They're my home from home. I mean, all the people that I've met here over the years, every time they walk back in the door, it's just like, a breath of fresh air. You get to see an old friend.
Yeah, we just had an impromptu family reunion last week or so.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it hard since you've been there for so long? So I've noticed since working there that, you meet people and you get to know them, and then they just get better, up and leave and go home. Like, is that hard for you when you see people that you kind of bonded with, like, leave, I mean, I'm sure you're happy for them like I am, but I just miss them.
It's just like you said, it's tough. You make these friendships, and you get to be with them like 3 or 6 months, and they get to go home, and I'm still here. But I'm so happy for them, and I keep in touch with so many of them on the phone that I don't lose the friendship that way. I get to talk to them still, and then they come back, sooner.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people from San Antonio that have come to get transplants too. And, I keep in contact with them. And, like we had a man that was transplanted here, and his mama, they came to my house for Easter this year with Bobby and Miss Nora and everybody. And so they do go away, but they're not far, at least from our hearts and our minds a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. I mean, I don't get to, hang out with them for Easter, but they leave, and then
I call mom and she calls me daughter.
Oh,
like
that's sweet.
Those things.
That's sweet.
And these are relationships that will never go away, partially because of what we've all been through, but partially just because we're friends, we're all really great family and friends.
Yeah, that's the great thing about Nora's Home is everybody has, everybody's going through the same stuff. So everybody can relate to everything, and like you just feel like you have family there. Even like the employees, like, well, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I feel like that. Like because I'm around my people, and I love coming to work just so I can be around people, and it's a really cool place.
Well, Bobby and I called our son. Like we really treat him as our son.
That's hilarious.
Advice
right there.
Like yesterday I was kind of teaching him how to drive a car. Like it was, but that's how
because he's so young. Yeah. He's so young.
Yes.
That's funny. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff. Okay, so I'm sure people can tell by now that you guys are together. So tell me about that whole process. Start from the beginning. I want all the juicy details.
Who's going first, Bobby or me?
Okay, so let me start this way. Well, no, go ahead, Bobby. You can go first.
Me?
Mhm. So Faith walked into a room and she had this beautiful glow around her. No, I'm just kidding. You
Well, actually, you're pretty close. You're not far off. I walked around. I was walking down the hall, and I was headed to my room, and I saw Faith, and I thought, you know, I'm here at Nora's. I've been here for years, and I've never really just had somebody catch my eye. And when she walked by, I thought, she's hot.
yes, yes. Okay.
Very cute girl. No. Anyways, when I saw her, I walked by her and I went on to my room. And my mom, she's my care provider. Or
She's your rock.
she is my rock. You're right about that. But anyways, I came straight to her and I told her, I said, Mom, I said, there's a really cute girl in here. And but she's way too young for me. I thought she was like 12. No, maybe not 12, but I thought she was really,
Just
really
because a 12-year-old's
good-looking
taller than I am.
I'm not that kind of guy, but it had to be older than that. But she was really cute. And I talked to her and we became friends. And we did talk quite a bit, hang out. And anyways, it wasn't until we actually left. She left Nora's home. I was still here. And we talked a little bit on the phone and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Faith, tell me how it was when you first saw Bobby. Like, did you have sparks like he did, or was he just like another guy at
Well,
Nora's
it
home?
wasn't. I wouldn't say it's like a spark, but it was like a smolder. So I was walking down the hallway, and I remember seeing Bobby, and I think it might be the same time. I smiled, and I said hi, and he said hi, but there was a look in his eyes, and it's not. I pay attention to people's eyes. It's what I do. It's how I see how people are really, like who they are. And something about Bobby's eyes just it made me really take note. Like I was like, oh, and I went to my room, which coincidentally was across the hall from his.
Oh.
So I remember just thinking, and we in Nora's home, we all spend time together. We all sit together and we visit and we eat together and we joke together and we watch movies together, but it was so that Bobby and I were like that even by ourselves. Like we would just say, hey, you want to go hang out? Just watch TV, even in the dining room here, like just go hang out. And then it just, there was a time, and I don't know if you ever met but I know you've heard about them.
Yeah, I haven't met them, but I do know.
I was in
them.
his room and we were talking about Bobby. I don't know how we got on the subject, but he often came to the party of the subject. And I was talking about his sons and how his sons were attractive. And she goes, have you seen his sons? And I said, have you seen their dad? Like, and it's weird because Bobby actually older than my parents. My parents had me really young. Okay. And so Bobby is older than my parents. And it was one of those things that I, at first, didn't think that anything really happened because of that. Like I just kind of put that barrier up myself. But in time, it doesn't matter. It hasn't mattered in a long time, And so I remember just thinking, really most often, he was a very interesting person and I really wanted to get to know him. And I probably had designs on him before he even knew what was going on. So.
Okay. So when did you guys finally realize that you both liked each other?
I asked her if she wanted to go out to eat. And we had talked on the phone a few times, like I said, and we went out to eat. And after that, we've seen each other ever since, actually.
When I realized that I really wanted to be with Bobby, like more than just kind of like a type of thing, like, all right, this guy's pretty amazing, was when he left. I was still at Nora's home. It was June after I'd moved in. and his mama left to go to his sister's house. And I realized then that there was like a massive hole in my life. It was really weird. I didn't even expect it to happen. It was just, there ended up being a massive hole with them gone. And I realized that probably that, that's when I realized that I really probably needed to be with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we went on a date. We went to the Rice Box just down the road and had Chinese food.
Mm-hmm.
And we came back and watched a movie. And that just happened. That was it.
Yeah.
And we tried to keep it a secret for a while, but nothing's a secret at Nora's Home.
Right. So when did you have the first kiss? Was it that day when you went on the rice box
Yeah.
date?
Yeah.
Aw. So, okay. I don't want to get too into it, but I want to know, was the kiss at Nora's home or was the kiss at the restaurant or in the parking lot?
So
Go, Faith.
it was, our very first kiss was in your car, wasn't it? But
Yeah.
the real kiss, the first real kiss was at Nora's home in the TV room.
Aw.
Which coincidentally has video cameras in it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are video cameras.
Yes.
Let's see. I wonder if I can go back to that day. Do you know the specific time and date?
Oh, yes, actually we do. We've had to think about it a couple times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really awesome. Okay, so you guys are together, you're keeping it a secret, and so now you guys are inseparable. So every time I see, because Faith, you don't stay at Nora's home full time anymore.
No.
You go back home to San Antonio, but you do come visit a lot.
Yeah.
And when I see you guys together, you guys are always together, and I just love it. And so, okay, so let me ask, that was the first kiss, and you're keeping it a secret, and you guys are together. When was the L word used?
Oh my goodness.
Actually, the L word came from Faith.
It did.
And yeah. She had just had a surgery and she was under anesthesia. We're talking stuff and she said, I love you.
Anesthesia makes the truth come out.
Well, and it's funny because I very clearly remember in my, messed up, foggy brain that I do love him. And I had just made it through a surgery that was really hard on me, actually. And I remember thinking, I love this man. And if something happens, because I had a really bad reaction to anesthesia that time. And I remember thinking, well, if something happens and I didn't tell him, then what? And so I remember telling him, I love you. But in my brain, it sounded like that, not like he did it. But and then he said, what? And I said, I love you. And I knew that he would never believe me because I was under anesthesia. And, he thought I would never remember. And I did because I said it on purpose. It wasn't a mistake by any means.
So when did you say it, Bobby?
Yeah.
Did you say it right back or did you wait until she was, sober?
No, I told her right back.
Oh.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that it was going to be said eventually anyways, because we were both trying not to say it.
Right.
It was just, it was just supposed, it had to happen, I guess. In my brain, it just had to happen.
Yeah. So you guys, you mentioned the age difference. So how, and I know how Faith felt, but how did you feel? You mentioned it in the beginning, but as it went along, does it still? Well, obviously, it doesn't still bother you, or you're not worried about it now, which you shouldn't be. But does it still affect you in any way, or change anything, or make you feel a certain way, or you past that now?
Well, at first it did. It made me feel really. Well, we were friends. It didn't feel really awkward until we went in public.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went in public, it did make a difference, because Faith, she's fixing to be 34 and but she looked so young when we're out in public. I mean, people do stare at us funny, but I just I quit looking at it pretty much unless we like go to some place.
Unless we're counting.
Yeah.
We count how many people look at us funny when we're walking around now.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of became a joke though to us because I mean I don't look at her like that, you know. I love her with all my heart and I love being with her. So it really doesn't matter to me at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it really stopped meaning anything to me. Honestly, if I can say it, it's when he was in the hospital waiting for his transplant. It kind of, it puts it into perspective, right? I'm used to being the patient, but I care and love for somebody who's dying right then. And it just made it so crystal clear. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all.
So I was going to ask you, so you already had your transplant, but Bobby hadn't had his transplant when you guys got together. So Faith, what was that like? What was that like? Like you already been through this traumatic transplant. You already know everything. And then you're watching Bobby who's, waiting for that that gift. Like, how did you feel? Like, were you ever worried that he wasn't going to get it or?
No, actually, I since my transplant, I'm trying to figure out how to say this so it doesn't. Since my transplant, I have the utmost faith in God, and I refuse to believe that God would put somebody that I've been searching for my entire life in front of me just to take him away. And I really believe in the miracle of transplant. I really do. And so for me, it wasn't that he wasn't going to get his transplant. It was more, I felt like as somebody who loved him and has been through this, it was kind of my responsibility to help him through it. And not a responsibility as in like a burden, but a responsibility as I felt like I could make it easier on him than mine was because I wasn't prepared. Even knowing my entire life I was going to have a transplant, I still wasn't prepared for some of it. And so I really just, I remember thinking back to what I really would have liked or wish I had during my transplant, process of recovery and waiting. And so I just kind of, I tried to prepare him as best as possible and show him how much I loved him. It didn't matter. I just tried to impress upon him how much I loved him and what might have been the shortest time we had. But I wanted to make sure that it was the best and that he was at least a little bit more comfortable waiting for that. Yeah.
I just like to say, Faith being there for me through the whole thing. I mean, my family was there. Faith, she was my rock. I mean, she knew what I was going through and stuff. And even though I kept getting sicker and sicker, I mean, she always kept my spirits up. I mean, at Christmas time, I mean, she decorated my room with all these Christmas lights and stuff, and people come by and they loved it. And, and another thing, one time, if I moved, my defibrillator had hit me and I hadn't been able to get a shower. And she washed me from the bottom of my feet to shampooing my hair. I mean, it was the most amazing thing because, I felt so bad and it refreshed me and made me feel so good. And for somebody to do that for me during that time, I can't even explain how that made me feel. I mean, I could tell she really loved me and I really love her too for everything she done and through the whole thing.
That's amazing story.
It was.
So do you guys find anything challenging or have any issues now that you both had a transplant and you're both still kind of in the recovery process? Does that cause any issues or like challenges or anything?
For me, I would say it's just because the appointments, and not the appointments, but transplant for one patient is hellaciously chaotic. especially in like the first 2 or 3 years. You're appointments, fixing
Right.
things that go wrong after transplant, because transplant changes everything in your body and all the things that happen, right? Now we're doing it for 2 people because we love each other, and it's no question that we are going to be there for each other at every
Right.
appointment, at every procedure, at everything. And so for me, it's not really a challenge that, I mean, it is a challenge because it's busy. That's why you see me so much, is because I'm back and forth for my stuff, his stuff,
Right.
and now we have Miss Barbara's stuff.
Yeah.
And, and so it's very chaotic. And I feel, for me, my challenge is that I feel like we spend all this time together when we're here, but we don't get to spend a lot of quality time together because we're hustling a lot of the time,
Yeah.
And so that's a challenge right now, I think, is just trying to get through life.
I would think that it would be good. So like a lot of people, like you said, it's just one person and you have your family with you, but they don't really know. They don't really, like, they know, but they don't know what you're going through. And so now you guys have each other, and especially for Bobby, since you've already been through it, Faith, like you have each other now to go through this together. You both know what you've been through. And so it seems like it would be really nice to, not that I would want my husband to have a transplant and go through it with me, but like if he did, it would be really nice that that's something we could do together. And so this is like a story that you guys will have forever now. And you could tell whoever, this is my husband, Bobby, and we both had a transplant together, not together, but around the same time. So I think it's a really cool story. Like, I just think it's really, really nice.
One of my most recent favorite things. So everywhere we go together and people talk to us, they want to know how we got together, especially because it's very obvious that we are very significantly different aged, right?
Mhm.
And most recently we went to Galveston and we played on the beach, and then we went to a restaurant on the front, or the beach front there on the wall, and this couple, the place was packed. So this couple offered, it's like, hey, come sit with us, and we sit down and we all introduce ourselves, and one of the first things is, so you guys are together, are you married? Also, how did you guys meet?
Yeah.
And Bobby and I looked at each other and we go, are we going to do it? All right, let's go. And so we explain our story. And by the end of our story, they are just so stunned that they're like speechless. And they're like, well, we didn't really expect that.
Yeah.
And people they really like our story. And I really love spreading it. It's my favorite story.
Mhm.
And I like being able to spread that light for people. You don't hear about something like this. This is like miracle on top of miracle here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I love your story too. That's why you guys are here. And so you guys were on the news, even they featured you on the news. And so I was even thinking about having you guys on here before that came out. And I was like, oh, this is even more perfect. So it's such a cute, adorable, traumatizing love story, right? So you have the cutesy part of it, and then you have this, like, I hate to say trauma, but it was traumatizing for both of you. And so it's just like you guys are like the perfect couple. You guys are like together, and you met at beautiful Nora's Home, and you both had a transplant, and it's just, and it's like the heart. Bobby, you had a heart transplant, and Faith, you had a lung transplant, and those two kind of go together in your body, and it's just a great story. It's just a great story.
I love it. I tell anybody who will listen, honestly, I can't keep quiet about it. It's one of the things that I didn't think I would ever be that obnoxious in love person, but I am. I'm like, let me tell you how I met my man. Like, because it's just my favorite story. And if I'm not with him, I want to talk about him or us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just do tell everybody.
Okay, so I've got one more question for y'all, and I'm going to ask it a little bit differently. So usually I ask my recipients to give me one piece of advice that you wish you had known pre-transplant that you know now after transplant. But instead, I'm going to say, give me a piece of advice if somebody is, so give me a piece of advice that you would give to somebody if they're going through kind of like what you guys are going through, where you're getting a transplant around the same time or together. What advice would you guys give to somebody who's just starting this process together? Like, give advice for like another couple. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
My advice, being the one who had the transplant first, I have a very unique perspective on being a patient and being a caregiver, because most patients don't ever get to be caregivers like this. Like it's, and the one thing that I would say is be patient. Remember back to your transplant, especially the person that had it first. Remember back to your transplant and think about how you wished somebody would treat you, if any different. And then remember that all things are done in love. And so remember that you love that person that you spend 24/7 for 3 months at least with. Remember that you love them, because it takes a lot of patience, a lot of trust, and a lot of love.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does take a lot of patience going through this because after we get a transplant, I mean, it's really tough to take care of us. We're not always in the best mood after getting it. We're not the best we can be in the way we act at very first, because we're in pain and stuff. But
right.
The other person, I mean, they're compassionate and understanding and just being there for us through the whole thing. That makes the world a difference.
Yeah. And I'm just going to throw this out there because you normally ask that other question. I would say I wish there's a big giant hole in mental health and transplant. There's a gigantic hole. And I wish that I was better prepared mentally. I wish that they had explained better the mental toughness that you have to have. Now, I'm mentally tough. Because CF makes you that way, I think. You have to be mentally tough. But for people who haven't had a lifelong disease and have to go through it, they're woefully unprepared for mental toughness and the strength that it takes mentally to get through it.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Like you've got to prepare your body for your strength to get through it, and then your mind, because I've done a couple episodes with mental struggles, and a lot of people don't understand, even like people who are having trouble mentally, they don't understand why they're having that. Like they just got this brand new gift and they should be excited and happy. And that's not always the case. So it's your body's completely changing. It's hard.
I started a support group here at Noras Home while I was here, because I found that there was such a hole in that part of our care. And if you aren't prepared mentally or can't talk to somebody or feel anybody can understand you, it makes it harder to recover. It makes it harder to do the things that you need to do as a patient to recover.
Yeah.
And so I feel that that's a very big, important thing to be fixed in all transplant centers.
Yeah, so, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, thank you for coming on and telling me your story. So if you guys happen to, get married or, whatever, I just hope that you come back on here to share that experience with us, because we're all going to be kind of wondering what happens. So we want updates.
Our next adventure is trying to figure out where we're going to live and how to do it together.
Yes. Yeah. Because you guys don't live in the same state. That's a challenge, but it'll be fun. You can always just live at Nora's Home. Maybe they can build you a little house in the back. Wouldn't that be so cute? Little guest house.
It'd be perfect. We could have a mother-in-law suite.
There you go. Okay, y'all. Well, thank you again for coming on. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week. I'm going on vacation, so stay healthy, and I will talk to you guys later.
Well, thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Pre to Post Transplant Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Facebook. Oh, and if you have not signed up to be an organ donor, please visit www.organdonor.gov and register today. You too can save lives.